Probing into the circumstances that led the Post Office to wrongly prosecute more than 900 sub-postmasters, all caused by errors in the Horizon IT software system. Mr Bates has been giving his version of events ahead of appearances by senior executives from the Post Office and Fujitsu, the company which built the software, and he's been less than complimentary about the future of the Post Office itself.
They need disbanding, it needs removing, it needs building up again from the ground floor, and as I've been quoted quite commonly, the whole of the postal service nowadays, it's a dead duck. It's beyond saving. It needs a real big injection of money, and I think that can only happen coming in from outside. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bugbear for the government for the years to come.
Now, campaigners are calling on the government to ban pesticides. In fact, 25 pesticides which contain so-called forever chemicals, after the potentially harmful toxins were found in more than half of food and drink samples. PFA chemicals, long-lasting toxins which have been linked to serious health issues, were found in more than 3,300 samples tested by the UK government in 2022. Out of all the items tested, strawberries were found to be the worst affected, as 95% of the 120 tested samples did contain PFAs. Now, the government says up to £11 million from water company fines ought to be reinvested into schemes to improve our waterways and wetlands. The Water Restoration Fund, which is now open for applications, will offer grants to local groups, charities, farmers and landowners to help them improve rivers, lakes and streams where illegal pollution has occurred. It's the latest move by the government to crack down on water company pollution in the face of growing public anger over the state of England's rivers and coastal waters. Apologies for the autocue not working. We'll be back in an hour's time with more for the latest stories. In the meantime, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's newspapers. I'm Simon Evans, I've got the working teleprompter, and tonight I'm joined by Headliners veteran Leo Kearse and our new recruit, Daniel Barker. Welcome, Daniel.
How's it going?
How are you feeling?
Great. I was electrocuted 5 times by your cold tap over there.
Oh,
I'm really ready to go.
Security staff on the way in as a sort of rite of passage. No,
yeah, I think it was my shoes, but I'm electrified right now.
Yeah, the hands-free water tap takes a bit of getting used to. I think that was installed specifically for COVID protocols, and to be honest, I'd be quite happy going back to a mechanical twister.
There's one of those ones with a big arm on the side. Yeah. Pumps it out.
And just put your mouth under it like a dog in the garden.
Fill your hat.
I like to drink. Anyway, let's have a look at the front pages. We have the Daily Mail to kick us off. At last, a voice of sanity on children and trans dogma. The Guardian say thousands of children unsure of gender identity have been let down by the NHS. If the Guardian's saying it, it's serious. The Times, NHS review use of puberty blockers. This begins to look like the main story. The Mirror, Mr Bates versus the thugs in suits, as we saw in the news just then. iNews, public finance mess prevents spending spree after election, Labour warns. I don't think any of us were under any illusions. And finally, The Express, bonkers ruling proves why UK should quit Euro Court. We'll be covering that one shortly. So, starting with the Daily Mail, Leo.
So the Daily Mail has, at last, a voice of sanity on children and trans dogma. So this is the publication of Hilary Cass's review of NHS gender identity services, and it's incredibly damning. It's insane. It's a lot of the things that have been, a lot of the concerns that have been raised on this channel, and by other people who've been condemned as being bigots or far right. Yeah. But this is revealed that their gender treatment for children is built on shaky foundations. Children have been lied to. They need to use a lot of caution before youngsters are led down the path of changing their pronouns, which often then leads on to further treatment. And also they say there's evidence severely lacking over the use of puberty blockers. So there's a lot of kids are put on puberty blockers who access these treatment services, and these they're told, oh, these are reversible, this is fine, it's you can come off them. In most cases they don't come off them, and even if they do, they can be left sterile or with health issues.
I saw some very alarming diagrams, well, photographs really, scientific sort of microscopic slides and so on of how cells are affected by these things in testicles and so on. It's not good. It reminded me, I don't know if this is meaningless, but it reminded me personally of the effect COVID had on lungs. You remember when you get that kind of deterioration of the quality.
Sterilisation is what's been going on.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the greatest, medical controversy that we've had for 100 years, pretty much.
Down, can't we?
And I mean, that's you can now say that without being considered to be, completely cancelable instantly.
Yeah. How quickly has that changed? It was only 6 months ago.
I mean, everybody knew it. You just couldn't get away with it. You couldn't say it because people hadn't caught up yet. Everyone's 5 years behind for some reason all the time.
It was like a religion as well. It was like, the gender ideology is this altar. It can't be questioned. It can't be. If you do anything like that, you're a heretic. And obviously, I mean, dishing out puberty blockers and hormones to children is something you might do as a last resort, but don't.
I remember reading, because what has really foxed me about this over the whole course of this trans thing is how it has seemed to turn everything upside down. 20 years ago, you had a kind of the new atheist movement, the rationalist community, the science, follow the science. These were the people on the left. These were sweeping away the old bigots, the religious diehards, who had the dogmas. And there was a guy called Carl Sagan, who was a real kind of, like a secular saint for these people, who wrote a book called The Demon-Haunted World about getting rid of the last vestiges of superstition. And he castigated people for affirmative therapy, where people would come in and go, oh, I see angels, and the therapist would go, do you see angels? It's like, no, tell them they aren't seeing angels.
Yeah, well, what this thing has revealed, which, again, by more journalists in America, is that, a proportion of these children do later turn out to just be gay or homosexual or something else, and they're now being chemically castrated or given these puberty blockers, and before they even had a chance to work out who the hell they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, you would think that the far left or the LGBTQ movement would at least step in to defend them to some extent, or say, hang on a second. But on the contrary, they were actually the attack dogs for this kind of science, which has now been proven to be completely out of place.
Absolutely. Well, it's reassuring that sense seems to be regaining the middle ground. We move on to the iNews, Daniel.
Oh, yes, the iNews. Public finance mess prevents spending spree after election, Labour warns, which basically is... I think this is kind of Labour saying, by the way, there'll be absolutely no difference between the Tories and us when it comes around. There would be a different change of colour, but it'd be the same thing. So the Tories would be... what would they be, like, no future? And Labour would be a slightly worse future. And things can only get worse. But
this is the way at the end of every long government, isn't it? No long government gets voted out at the point at which its public finances are in great shape, and it's just sorting out exactly who's going to be the beneficiary of the windfall.
But I think last time around, like when Blair got in 97, it was 97, wasn't it? The Tories had actually left the country in a pretty decent state.
Yes.
And John Major was a kind of underrated.
Well, Ken Clarke, in particular, his Chancellor, was very good. Yeah, that's true, because they lost because they had that Black Wednesday thing, like in '92, and then they limped on for like 4 whole years. Yeah,
and there's the corruption and things like that brought them down.
Sleaze.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they have now with Riggle. What's his name? Riggle?
With a W. Right.
Yeah. It's a very majorish kind of last days of Rome thing.
You saw with the non-dom tax policy, which is kind of a modification. Labour's modified Hunt's policy on non-doms to be a little bit more aggressive, like grab an extra £1 billion to throw into the bonfire. and the strange thing is that, part of that policy was to hire, another 5,000 tax auditors. That was my mic.
That's where you're going to spend the money. Oh, well, you dropped it. No, I think it's still on.
I'm so electric that things are just bouncing off me.
This is why you're a danger to our water system as well, by the sound of it.
Yeah,
I
so
have a
it's
theory
give with one hand,
non-doms.
take with the other, and there's absolutely no difference between the two, as far as I can tell. Zero votes is happening, it seems.
All that's going to happen, they'll get rid of the non-doms. The non-doms will go and live somewhere else. That's fine. Everyone will feel a bit sad because the non-doms are no longer, around to, spit at in Knightsbridge. What they should do is allow the non-doms to stay, but every so often, a Lamborghini just gets demolished. You know what I mean? As a public spectacle, just gets lifted up by some massive mechanical claw and swung into a penthouse.
Yeah, I mean, nobody likes non-doms. I mean, I don't know anyone who's like, oh, hang on, think of the non-doms. But you never know. I mean, we could start some kind of activist group and do something about it.
I think they're much better value as entertainment than they are just absolute, cashing them in. Anyway, we have The Guardian, Leah. We need to get through these now.
So the Guardian has ministers announced shoplifting crackdown. The government is investing more than £55 million in expanding facial recognition systems, including mobile vans that will scan crowded high streets as part of a renewed crackdown on shoplifting. So I mean, it's weird to see the government actually focusing on real crime instead of thought crime or hate crime or naughty tweets or whatever. So I mean, that part of it is nice, and we have seen there's a lot of lawlessness on this. I've seen crazy videos of people just filling bags and just walking out of shops unstopped.
But they'll have their faces recognised as they do it, which is a nice bonus.
Unless they're wearing a face mask. I mean, the thing that...
They'll become like Mizzy or whatever his name was, like some kind of TikTok star.
But the thing that I'm worried about is this is being used to sort of bring in this facial rate. It's like ANPR for faces. And, then all of a sudden you're in China and they're using it to persecute political dissidents and stuff. So that's
not many people know, but a lot of these big mega stores like Westfield and stuff, they already have facial recognition technology installed behind adverts. I mean, that's not like a conspiracy theory, by the way. That's actually...
So when you sort of go in and do your face...
Well, you're already being facially tracked when you go into some of these shopping centres already, and that's by private companies. Not a conspiracy theory.
This close to living in the woods at this point. And narco-tyranny is here. Metro, Daniel, to wrap up this section.
This is right. The rats have taken over the NHS. They've colonised the wards. And 18,000 pest cases in 3 years, cockroaches, flies and maggots. And that's not an environmentally friendly food alternative. That's actually just happening in the wards.
Although that might be a way of a win-win situation emerging out of this, I suppose.
Well, I mean, as far as some of the left are concerned,
some kind of blender.
Well, I mean, it's an environmentally sustainable and actually quite tasty, believe it or not. I have eaten them myself, especially in my videos. But insects, I read this line here, is insects are biting off.
Biting legs off stuff,
But luckily, it's not that. They're just biting their legs.
In situ. I think there's got to be a point at which we do just kind of accept that the NHS is basically, it's gone, hasn't it? It's a bit like somebody, that woman who was on... Andrew Doyle we're going to talk about her later, the tickle versus
tickle versus giggle.
And she said this about Grindr. She said there are women on there, you're not going to get rid of them now. So it's up to gay men to set up a new site and just give up on Grindr. And that's how I feel about the NHS. We're not going to save the NHS.
We've got like a two-tier health system. It's sort of come in quite quietly, but now anybody who can afford it, goes to Bupa or whoever. And it's a bit of a shame. The NHS used to be. I mean, for about a decade, it was great.
Well, I mean, it's sad. It's sad that this is happening. It's sad that 181 billion isn't enough. And it's like, well, how much more do you need? And the truth is, as far as I can see it, is you could throw everything at it, but it just cannot keep up with the demand that's been placed on it.
Absolutely, or with the most extraordinary treatments which are available now. Some of them quite eye-wateringly expensive. That's it for the front pages. Coming, we have non-doms getting tied off and thrown in the river. European courts make Greta Thunberg queen, and these aren't just farting cows, these are M&S farting cows. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The perception of a crime being committed is not based on whether that person intended to commit a crime or not, but whether the victim, in inverted commas, or anybody else for that matter who happened to hear whatever was said, determines that it was motivated by malice or ill will. Most of these things come out in heated exchanges or in, very casual exchanges. And then somebody says, oh, I'm offended or I'm hurt or I'm whatever because this was clearly malicious and it's against me as a black person or a transgender or sexuality, whatever it might be, and somebody says, I perceive this to be motivated by hate. Now, at that point, what is the reasonable test that anybody could apply as to what was in somebody's mind at the time? You don't know what I'm thinking now. I don't know what you're thinking now. Why is it that a crime can be committed on the basis of what somebody is alleged to be thinking?
Well, that's also how discrimination often works, because people have worked out these days that saying something or sending an email like one I received some years ago that said, let's go round her place with pickaxe handles and balaclavas and see what we can do. Now, that's an email that was sent about me. People have worked out that you don't do that. But from the circumstance of what happens, if racial taunts were being shouted, if taunts about someone's protected characteristic were being shouted in the run-up to what then happened, it would be pretty obvious that that was a hate crime.
But we know, for example, that street preachers have been arrested merely for quoting the Bible and without actually intending, anything beyond that.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's newspapers. I'm Simon Evans, still here with Leo Kearse and Daniel Barker. So, Daniel, we will kick off with the Daily Mail in this section. This sounds exactly like the sort of helpful intervention that the people of Britain voted so enthusiastically for in 2016.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a story about the ECHR being sued by 2,000 Swiss women, older women. I mean, as far as I can see, they're obviously activists.
Yeah.
I mean, they're Swiss, so they're loaded and they've got nothing to do. So it's like, it's too hot, sue the government, I mean, I would love to sue our government to make it hotter, quite frankly, but we can't do that. But yes, the ECHR are now mandating that the Swiss government are not doing enough to address the climate issue, and so they're now kind of, legally required to do more to slow down global warming. I mean, good luck with that.
It has created a sort of precedent. It seems to be understood that other people will now be able to sue their governments if they don't feel that they are pursuing the climate agenda, whatever you want to call it, with enough vigour. And yet it's also, as somebody said, something slightly similar a few days ago on Twitter, it's a bit like one of those old first-season Star Trek episodes where some mad alien is going to sue the whole of humanity for crimes against the universe. It's got this kind of
don't give them ideas.
Pompous,
Well, it's highly partisan, isn't it? And it's like you don't expect this kind of partisan stuff. It's almost like a lot of big institutions now act as kind of like the kind of strong arm for far left or leftist ideas.
Well, and that has changed dramatically, because I remember not very long ago, George Monbiot was one guy, for instance, the Guardian environmentalist correspondent, was absolutely catastrophising about some new worldwide legislation that was going to come in that was going to enable corporations to sue the EU if they tried to impose legislation that was against those corporations. business interests.
And
Now we've gone exactly the opposite pole.
And ironically, that would have helped people. You know, that would have resulted in a growth in wealth and better products for people. But this is ridiculous. I mean, I don't want the sort of court has stepped in to make the government protect its people. I don't want the government to be given lots of extra powers to protect me. No. I want to be protected from the government. I'm not worried about, you know, the weather in 50 years' time as much as I'm worried about communism right now.
Absolutely right. Leo, The Guardian again, they have just returned from the M&S food hall across the road.
Yes, so M&S, Marks & Spencer's, has invested £1 million in tackling methane from burping and farting cows. I mean, £1 million sounds like a lot, but that's just 3 items from the Marks & Spencer's food hall. You know what I mean? It's not going to be much of a day.
That was just about get you Lidl's edible range, I think.
But apparently they're going to cut 11,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions by giving the cows that supply Marks & Spencer's, well, they don't supply, the farmers supply Marks & Spencer's, but they're going to give them a feed supplement derived from mineral salts and a byproduct of fermented corn, which will prevent them, basically reduce their farts by about 8.4%, which sounds weird. I just want normal cows eating normal grass.
Yeah, great, let's give them corn. That's the solution. Give the cows corn. Yeah, that will solve the climate crisis.
Is that where we're heading? I was up on a farm over the Easter holidays, friends of friends, right up on the Scottish border. And I've got to say, cows, their digestive systems are a mess. I mean, these were healthy cows by all accounts, and it's an organic farm, but they really do rumble and belch, but the stuff they walk around and they're just endlessly spilling. I mean, this is not, you know, it's not a clean machine, a cow.
Can we not just leave the cows alone?
Yeah,
leave them alone. Why are the left so obsessed with cows? I mean, we know why, but just leave them alone.
They want to make them disgusting. They want to fill your head with images of burping and belching and farting, because then you will be more prepared to eat the cockroach burger or indeed just the lab-grown sort of, was it cultured meat?
Well, people should Google the biogenic carbon cycle. You know, methane plays a crucial role in that. Absolutely. And a lot of meat producers know that. Even the green meat producers know that. And methane breaks down in 12 years, whereas carbon from cars and factories takes 1,000 years. So
also,
just look into it. Google it for 5 minutes.
A lot of very exciting new meat is going to start appearing through the permafrost during the thaw.
We'll get some mammoths.
Absolutely, I think there is going to be some very interesting new restaurants opening in Siberia. Watch out for that.
Yeah, watch out for East London,
Bad news from the farming community in the Telegraph, Daniel. At least those unwilling to switch to pisciculture and duck shoots. I saw evidence of this as well on the border.
Which one's this? This is
the flooded farms.
I mean, look, I sympathise with farmers. I like farmers. You know, I find it difficult to criticise that. If they're saying things are bad or they're not happy, I'm going to listen to them. But, I mean, what they're saying is true, but we have to see it in the wider context. The farm yields changed dramatically across history, and you can go back to the 16th, 15th century. These things are not consistent, and I think people have become so used to everything just working so perfectly, that all the shelves being stocked, that they forget that everything rests on the earth
on
working
membership
properly.
of the EU, exactly.
So I mean, what these farmers are saying isn't great, and sure, the climate change, making weather more dramatic, absolutely, is going to make this kind of thing happen. But it's always been dramatic, and this kind of thing has always happened. It's not good that it's happening.
Just to cover off exactly what has happened, they were saying essentially it's rained so much in the early few months of this year that their fields remain underwater and they'll be unable to be a harvest at all.
So yields are going to be down a lot. So wheat yields are going to be down 15%, winter barley is down 22%, and oilseed rape is down 28%. So this is the biggest drop since the 1980s, and this is because of we have had some pretty crazy weather recently. It's been cold, it's been wet. I mean, that's standard for the UK, but apparently it's particularly bad. But this shows. I mean, what we're doing, we're trying to stop climate change happening by stopping cows farting and stopping people having any kind of fun or luxury whatsoever. But what we really need to be doing is just letting the population decline naturally. Britain can't grow enough food to support itself anyway. If yields are going to be dropping, then, you know, why are we still pursuing this sort of Ponzi scheme of bringing in as many people as possible? And, you know, and also...
So you think a major starvation event this autumn might be quite...
Well, I think we could avoid
benign effect.
We could avoid a starvation event by just letting the population... The population's in decline, people aren't having kids.
There are other ways you can lean in, or... I think there was some genuinely sort of environmentalist movement that go beyond the sort of let's try and stop climate change, and they're more like how do we adapt to it? And they, for instance, would say probably grow rice.
Right.
I mean, you probably get a rice harvest in before June or July at this point. And, well, again, on this same farm, he does have fields underwater. We drove down there at night on the Kawasaki Mule, killed the lights, like trickling, absolutely covered in ducks, about 2,000 ducks.
Right.
Quite interesting sort of bird watching through the night scope. But I was thinking, man, there's a lot of protein on your field there. Do you know what I mean? I mean, just turn it around very quickly. You can't shoot one because all the others would take off. So you'd have to have coordinated, like 2,000...
But they used to have them, I mean, they used to catch wild ducks for the market, and they'd funnel them into big mesh tunnels and stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah,
so they come out, like, plucked and everything.
And my dad had a punt gun, which can shoot, you know, 20 of them at a time.
That's the way to do it.
I think these farmers should probably speak to the 2,000 Swiss old ladies, actually. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting that the farmers aren't suing the government for our lack of action on climate change.
Lay
In
in some sourdough flour in the meantime. Anyway, Guardian Leo, this might be the last one from this section. Australia feels like one of those games created for small children where they have to try not to laugh. Giggle versus tickle.
So tickle versus giggle. I mean, it's a great... What a great name for a court case. But it's a transgender woman, Tickle, who's suing a female-only online refuge called Giggle for alleged... I don't know if I'd call an online refuge Giggle. It's not the most, you know, sort of refugee sounding.
I think it was an all-female site which included like refugee advice exchange, but also could just be for light chat, like a mum's net. It could be anything. It was a one-stop
like a fun
shop.
Refuge.
Yeah, fun refuge. Yeah, fun refuge is another great.
This is going to be a landmark case and is going to set precedent, I think, across the West. This is Roxanne Tickle. So she's a transgender woman from New South Wales. She's suing the social media platform Giggle for girls after being blocked from using the app. And this is the sort of biological sex versus gender identity battle because, you know, she's saying, well, I identify as a woman, so I should be allowed in this, you know, female-only space. Whereas the app owner is saying, well, no, this is just for females. Biological sex is, you know, is immutable. So
it's the defining thing here.
Yeah. So you know, sorry, but you can't come in. And I have, you know, she's got a birth certificate stating she's female. She's had gender affirmation surgery and feels in her mind psychologically she's a woman, but she looks a lot like the drummer from Iron Maiden. So you know, it's tough. It is a tough balance to make.
Well, she was obviously making some women uncomfortable. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come to light in the first place, would it? That's the thing I always think. Well, if you know. I mean, at some point, somebody has complained, you know. You know, it's not like nobody's just...
And it should be pointed out that this app is to connect people to meet in real life.
Yeah, right.
You know, if there could be confusion, it's just like if you think you're going to be meeting up with another biological woman and then you turn out not to be, then that could fall on...
But it turns out to be a tickle, and then that's when things can get a little bit, you know...
I mean, I don't know. I mean... It
crosses a line.
The app, if that's their prerequisite for joining the app, then that's it, isn't it?
I think it's going to be interesting. We'll watch. But I will say this, Sal Grover, the CEO, and I follow her on Twitter, Sal Tweet, she is very capable media personality. I think she might have been an actress or something. Anyway, she's... I think, you know, it feels to me like the gender-critical gang are in the driving seat lately. Do you know what I mean? Some of J.K. Rowling's...
Well, J.K. Rowling would really like this story, wouldn't she?
Yeah. God, she is on...
I'll leave this one to her, to be honest.
We're at the halfway point. Coming up, Racist Week, Sexist Museums, Soft-Headed Scrabble. It's the Culture Wars Quartet. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, it's going to be a dry and clear night for most of us across the UK. There's a chance of frost tomorrow, but it will also be a fairly bright start. That's as this ridge of high pressure is moving in for this evening. It's a brief settled interlude between weather systems, so there will be more rain to come on Wednesday. But for the time being, it's going to be a dry night and a clear night. So plenty of starry skies, and that's going to allow temperatures to fall away much more quickly than they have done of late. So it's going to be a cold colder start tomorrow with a risk of frost across eastern areas of Scotland, northeast England as well, but everywhere is going to be on the chillier side to start the day, away from the far west where we'll see the rain move in quite quickly tomorrow morning. So Northern Ireland seeing the heaviest rain first thing, but also cloudy skies and some fairly persistent rain across parts of Wales, the southwest, but it's into Scotland, western Scotland in particular, where the rain will turn quite persistent through the day, as well as parts of the Lake District. We could see 60 millimetres of rain falling through the day. But it is going to be a warmer day, so that cloud and rain is bringing with it milder air that stays with us for Thursday as well. And on Thursdays, there is a chance of seeing some brighter spells, particularly across northern and eastern areas of the country. Across the south, we're more likely to see some drizzly rain come and go through the day. Friday, once again, looks like it should stay dry across southern areas with more rain moving into the north and temperatures rising to the high teens.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. Leo's just been showing us his new gun. It's an antique, so he doesn't have to register it, just in case you were worried. But he doesn't have to. It's fine, technically. So, Telegraph, Daniel, and to paraphrase Leo, what is racist today?
Actually, this is the 4-day week is now racist, so you add that to the list.
Yeah.
I think calendars, clocks also have issues as well.
Linear time itself, I think, is sometimes accused of being...
Well, I actually typed this into ChatGPT the other day.
Right.
And it is. Everything I typed in was in some way. So, but this is kind of a strange one to me. But so the 4-day week could be racist, a report suggests, because of the difference between white-collar workers and how their time works versus more blue-collar workers who work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they're going to get the raw end of this deal.
Oh, that actually does make sense, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether it's a racist thing. It sounds more like a class thing.
Well, as with most things that are racist, according to the studies, it's actually a class issue, as usual. Yeah. And nobody wants to talk about that.
No, it's weird, isn't it? They're trying to turn us all into Marxists, because that's how my analysis comes back at it more often than not now.
But the real issue here, I mean, it's turned me into a raging anarcho-capitalist libertarian, because the real issue is that this is the public sector, and they're saying, oh, we can go down to a 4-day work week. Yeah. And, they do these trials, and of course the trials succeed. If you're in a trial, if it passes, you go down to a 4-day work week, you're going to make sure that trial works, you know what I mean? So really the issue is that, number one, if these workers can get all the work done in 4 days, then fire 1 in 5 of them, and they can all work 5 days and work just as hard as you're working on those 4 days. How do you like that? This is taxpayers' money. So, the real issue is that we're paying way too much for wasteful people in the public sector.
But we do all know, don't we, Parkinson's law, famously, work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion, and this applies much more to large organisations than it does to individuals, and the larger they get, the more imponderable it is, the more that work will create new work. If you need need it to be,
Yeah.
if people are going to get paid. But I have a lot of sympathy for, I'm assuming we're talking about garbage collection or council gardeners, people who work in the parks, that sort of thing. Very much harder for them to kind of go, right, I start at 9 and I end at 5 and I have 5
And they're
days
the ones that are actually doing a real job that actually benefits somebody, instead of like sitting in an office working out policy or drafting, you know, endless documents for mandarins.
Is there anything we've missed here, Daniel?
Not exactly, no. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the Welsh government came up with this. This seems to be a kind of like own goal, I guess. It seems to be like kind of left-wing policy.
Yeah.
And the left are coming along and go, no, that's not OK. And so, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, you know, they've shot themselves in the foot, let it go. I mean...
It seems to also be going on more in the Celtic fringes. The Welsh Government and the SNP are both doing it, although also South Cambridgeshire.
Who'd have thought they'd be lazier?
I mean, I don't necessarily... If it is as productive, if you can prove that to me, then fine. I don't have a problem with a 4-day week. No. I mean, I've worked in offices and, you know, I didn't do a lot of work.
No. But it's funny. I mean, my wife, she works at home. She is and has done for 20 years. She's very hard-working. By and large, she's very self-disciplined. But I do know, I mean, she goes into the office every so often to show her face, you know, and she comes back always, I have to be careful what I say here, but she's like, you know, just like almost stunned, you know, by the inefficiency, by people just not... And these are the ones who are working in the office.
Yeah.
Well, those people who must be like when they get home, you know, those people who don't seem to feel the burden of any conscience, even when they're under the scrutiny of the boss. I say this, I became a stand-up comedian because I say 2-hour workday. More gender wars in the Telegraph, Leo, and an exhibit that you could not drag me into with a grappling hook through my tackle is been ordered to admit more male visitors, apparently.
Yes, this is a museum's women-only ladies' lounge exhibit, which has been ordered to admit men. So this is the ladies' lounge. It's billed as a living artwork within the Museum of Old and New Art in Hobart, Tasmania. I've gigged there, and it was intended to. Yeah, it's great. I loved it. It was intended to upend notions of misogyny and male patriarchy. Because, the patriarchy hasn't had enough of a kicking over the last few years, you know. Why has everybody got it in for the patriarchy? Look what the patriarchy did for us. I'd love to see the feminarchy build some oil rigs, but I'm getting away from it. So basically, they've taken this concept of a male-only space, the Aussie pub, which apparently up until the 60s, women were excluded from.
Well, I have been in Australian pubs, and it's been a few years, but when I was sort of backpacking around there about 30 years ago, they were pretty unreconstructed. We would genuinely have a stripper in most lunchtimes in the pub, just in every pub, you know.
Not even evening meal.
No, not daylight strippers. That was.
Man, you don't want to see a stripper in the daylight. That's just against the laws of nature.
And I can't. I mean, that was on the mainland or whatever you call it, like Sydney and stuff. I think Hobart was a little bit even more so, but you know, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So they basically tried to flip that sort of patriarchal establishment by having a women-only space with subservient men who served you drinks and stuff like that, and they've been ordered because, you know, everybody's a joyless apparatchik now. They've been ordered to stop that and allow men in. And I don't know why people can't, you know, have their fun if they want their male-only space and have their fun if they want their female-only space.
Well, there you go. I mean, the inclusivity... shock troopers have done it again. I mean, they've eaten their own once again. And now every space has to be everybody. Basically, we just go back to not having any spaces at all.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not a space at that point, is it? It's just a room.
Exactly. It's not like the Garrick or something. It's not like a proper club, which has been said, this is a woman's only space. It's supposed to be an exhibit, which is supposed to make you go, oh, yeah, I suppose it would be a bit like that if women ruled the world instead, and reflect on how mean you've been. And in that respect, I suppose to exclude men from an exhibit which is supposed to be drawing attention to it. It's a bit different from going, this is a lesbian pub where lesbians come and wear chalk-striped suits and smoke cigars and get served by boys in tight pants. I mean, that, I would say, keep men out of there. But an art exhibit, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to know if any men do go into this space, if they want to go into it.
Jason Lau went into it or was not allowed and has
so Jason Lau had a problem, and drop everything, guys. Jason Lau had a problem.
12 time zones away, we're talking it up.
He should call the ECHR. Simple as that. Call the ECHR.
Independent now, Daniel Giles Brandreth. Giles Brandreth is out promoting a dumbed-down version of Scrabble. Soft Scrabble.
Yeah, I mean, he's defending this new version of Scrabble, which is called Scrabble Together, which is essentially a kind of co-op version of Scrabble that allows you to play with a friend and play with a different system that isn't so competitive. It's more kind of challenge-based, so everyone's competing to do the challenges. And the idea is to make it more accessible and inclusive.
Sort of thing, like puzzles, like a series of puzzles. Is that?
Well, you're still trying to make the words, but if you need help, the person next to you can be like, well, how about that?
Oh, my God.
God, that sounds feeble.
I mean,
I know they've taken away the triple word score bit. I get that. I mean, I like Scrabble, but I remember when I was young and my cousins had a version of Scrabble that had sort of pictured tiled... I can't remember. It didn't actually seem to help at all. In fact, it was harder to understand than regular Scrabble.
Yeah.
But they've always been, like, kind of nursery versions of Scrabble.
Well, they're trying to get Gen Z to play it. That's why they're doing this. But, of course, I mean, the reason they're not playing Scrabble is because Scrabble is unbelievably boring.
Well,
that's what I think.
I
and you're never going to get them to play
if you play it with other people who have all the right level of competitiveness and equal ability and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's not the sort of thing you play on a phone.
You know, you've got Fortnite over here and then Scrabble over here. I mean, just good luck. It's not going to happen.
No,
but
you're right.
But just don't have it. They've got like helper cards that'll help people out with words. They've got all these challenges instead of like making getting points and trying to beat the other person. You've just got to collect these challenges like playing a 3-letter word. That's one of the challenges.
Oh, God. They've made it like a cross between Yahtzee and a video game, haven't they?
Yeah.
Pathetic.
You just get a point for filling your name in. I don't know, these people, if you're this thick, I don't know, give them a plastic bag to play with. Give them a bare electrical wire to play with.
Yeah, I'll make it physical. I mean, set up a little net so you can chuck the letters in. I mean, why even have letters at all? I don't understand. I think of a million things I could do with Scrabble.
You have to throw an arrow, and whatever it hits on the board, that's the letter you get. And then you get that, you mix it up. The trouble with Scrabble is you're waiting too long for the other person to make their go, aren't you? That's the big problem
if you play it properly, you've got a timer like chess that stops it being boring.
Do you remember that Matt Kirshen comedian?
Oh, yeah.
He had a good joke a few years ago. It was about chess, but I think it applies to Scrabble. He said, I was playing chess with a friend, and he said, what do you say we make this a bit more interesting? So we stopped playing chess.
Yeah, well, that's what I think about Scrabble.
Yeah. Anyway, over to Belgium now, Leo, and an interesting perspective on old age from the head of a Christian mutual insurance provider.
So this is interesting. So expand Belgian euthanasia laws to prevent social care crisis, says insurance boss. So Belgium's euthanasia laws should cover elderly people who are tired of life or who feel that they're a burden on the public purse. A health insurance chief has urged. Yeah, obviously, he's urged this. He wants the old people to kill themselves because otherwise his company's going to have to pay out the health insurance to keep them alive. I mean, this is just him. He's like collected all the dividends from them all over the years, and then he's like, oh man, well, I'm going to have to pay this out again. Yeah, he's like, no.
And demanding health care.
Yeah, they're demanding the service provided that they paid for. This is ridiculous, and it's scary in Belgium, and we're seeing this across the West, in Canada as well. They're having euthanasia laws brought through that are then being used to kill perfectly sort of viable people. There's been, young people in their 20s in Canada killed just because they're depressed, or one person had diabetes and was depressed. It was ridiculous.
But it's interesting. I think a lot of people, and if I'm honest, I think myself, I would have some sympathy if a way could be found. Let's put aside the practicalities for people who have sunk into dementia, whose quality of life is, very, very low, and can be kept alive meaninglessly. But he doesn't seem, I think it's a he, doesn't seem to be talking about. They're just saying many elderly people are tired of life. Well, I'm tired of life. I mean, I have those afternoons, sometimes 2 or 3 days strung together, when you just go, oh, what is the point? I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to have a really bad hangover and then end up killing yourself, because you just can't. I mean, I have had hangovers that bad.
Yeah, and you don't want to have this sort of people being pressured into killing themselves, which is what this could lead to.
But I mean, Belgium. Anyway, final section to go now, the curious and quirky one. This is the coming war with the machines, and the lengths Gary Barlow will go to just to con pensioners out of their savings. We will see you in a couple of minutes.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Mark White was saying there, Sue, that he thinks it's getting worse, and you were nodding along to that. You've seen this over decades. Situation is sprawling along the coast, more people, and the danger is ramping up.
Definitely, because the numbers and the money it's run like a military operation. I mean, I've been told that by the National Crime Agency, and I don't need to be told it by them to know it. It is meticulous, because there's so much money involved. So they're marshalling migrants here, the gangs, they're controlling the gangs, and there will be a kingpin. You know, in some city far away in Erbil, or even in Paris, or in Brussels, who never goes anywhere near the beaches. It's like a Ponzi scheme, really.
Yeah. With that in mind, there's such vested interest, such money, such demand, a never-ending string of demand of people who want to come here.
People are already on their way, remember?
Yeah.
If we stop them now, they're already leaving. There's people leaving the Sudan now are going to reach the only place they want to get to, the French beaches, to get to the UK. They'll arrive in 2.5 years' time.
And so,
you see, they're on their way.
If it's that organised, that lucrative, that desirable, how on earth do we ever break that chain?
It sounds incredibly harsh, but I'm sure, I think if the EU change politically in the June elections, which I think it probably will,
yes,
I think they will put up, as the Greeks have done, holding camps all over Europe, the coasts of Europe, where people are assessed, just to see who is coming in, which would be a plus, as the Greeks have done, because we have no idea who is coming in.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Edged in. Hello, I'm Charles Brandreth. Welcome back to Headliners. He set up the, did I mention this, but the World Scrabble Championships. He invented the format for that in 1971.
There's an amazing documentary about the world of competitive Scrabble. I assume it's the Scrabble Championships. And it's got the guys that are staying up late at night, gambling and all the rest of it. It's much better than I'm making it sound.
Hardcore. Welcome back to Headliners. Anyway, Daily Mail, to kick off this final section, Leo. And Elon Musk, I've just realised, is an anagram of your name. Elon Musk is ramping up the technophobia, or possibly techno-utopia. Either way, Robbie the robot is coming for your job.
So the robot uprising could be imminent. Elon Musk warns that AI will outsmart mankind by the end of next year. But it's not that hard, though. I mean, a wooden spoon with a face drawn on it could outsmart most people this year. So I don't think we need to wait too long. But yeah, basically, this is more sort of doom-mongering about AI. But yeah, they're basically saying the scenario played out in Terminator 2 and Terminator 1 will actually come to
Skynet becomes sentient, and then it all kicks off.
Yeah. I mean, what you'd be really worried about is the fact that the biggest AI platforms are all completely woke.
Yes.
And that's what Elon Musk has been pointing out.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll criticise one side, but they will refuse to criticise the other. I mean, that's dystopian.
We covered that a couple of weeks ago, the Gemini thing that came out of Google or Alphabet or whatever, and they withdrew that quickly because it was ridiculous and it was making out Oliver Cromwell might very well have been a Sikh or something. But, of course, it will come back in a few months' time, very much more polished, very much more nuanced and subtle, and with the same messaging. And interesting, by the way, I only spotted this today. It's not the sort of thing we cover particularly on this story, but Meta, Zuckerberg's company that is most famously owns Facebook and I think Instagram, isn't it? Yeah. So that had plummeting share prices about 18 months ago, mainly because he was going all in on the metaverse, the thing that you could only access through the goggles. And then he went, you know what, actually, no, this is nonsense, pulled out, and it has very nearly quadrupled in value, the share price of Facebook or Meta or whatever since then.
They also fired a lot of workers.
Zuckerberg is once again the most powerful, he's the most wealthy man on the planet again. He's overtaken Musk. I mean, obviously, like these individuals...
That'll change within 2 weeks.
But what I'm saying is there was a point where Musk was kind of surging ahead and there was this kind of sense that, he's ridden to our, to our rescue, this libertarian, this man that wants all sides of the story to be heard. But Zuck is still a pretty powerful player in this.
Well, I would argue that...
He seems to be the source of a lot of the wokery.
Well, the good news is that, Elon Musk has created Grok AI, which isn't woke, is actually, well, it's where we were, say, 10 years ago.
OK.
And it's not afraid to say something controversial or something that would deem to be offensive. It basically gives it to you neutrally, and it's not afraid to be funny. It's neutral, most importantly.
Do we get to choose which AI takes over humanity? Because I'd rather have that one.
Well, that's what... I mean, it's going to be the best. It is Elon Musk. It's Tesla. I don't think... Somehow, I don't think Facebook's one's going to be able to be... Ultimately, the one that allows the most freedom of thought will win out.
But it's the way it emerges, it's the way it manifests, isn't it? 2 years ago, I don't think any of us thought that commercial artists were going to be the first job to go, but now that's just been basically rendered absolutely redundant. We've got a couple more stories to crack through, something rather odd and old-fashioned and quaint in The Guardian, Daniel, a story highlighting the much-cherished notion that the Germans have no sense of humour.
Oh, is this the one to do with the
art gallery?
Oh, that's right. A German guy... Oh, have you got it? There it is.
Yeah.
A German art museum has fired a guy for hanging his own work in the gallery hallway.
Right.
And, I mean, I've seen lots of prank videos of this online. I mean, quite a few people have tried it. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a slow news story, but I guess he's a 51-year-old man. He worked in the gallery. He'd been doing some artwork, and this thing was massive. This was like... It's like 120 centimetres across, and he took it in, hung it up in the hallway, and now they're doing him for criminal damage for putting a nail in the wall.
Oh, that's very
I mean,
sad,
you would have thought... I mean, the fact is they didn't notice for a while, of course, because...
Like they never notice if the Rothko is upside down, that sort of thing. I wonder whether they shouldn't have a room in art galleries for the staff to hang their...
like Tony Hart.
Tony Hart
exactly.
What happened to inclusivity? I mean, that's not very inclusive, is it? Get his artwork out.
Get him over here. He could tour. I think he might be a popular attraction. Daily Star now, Leo. A superficially silly story hides a wider malaise about those whom Gary Barlow really has swindled out of millions.
So this is a woman catfished by a fake Gary Barlow who said he told her he loved her and begged for cash. Sounds like what Gary Barlow would do, to be honest. But yeah, this is Janet Smith, 62, from Colchester, Essex, was bombarded with messages from a man claiming to be Take That singer Gary Barlow, but he was actually a scammer from Nigeria. So he said Gary Barlow, the fake Gary Barlow, gave her compliments and said...
The fake one did.
I don't know what the real one said.
Keep saying that.
And said that he'd split up. But she grew suspicious. I mean, she's sharp here. Could have another Poirot here. It's amazing. And eventually got him to reveal that he was just a guy from Nigeria trying to get some money.
We have one more story to squeeze in, but do be careful out there on Facebook. Daniel, this last story, one of the most heartwarming stories of true love winning out, despite height differences.
Oh, yeah, this is the person on the inside matters most, say, as a US couple with height record difference. So, unfortunately, a UK couple have been beaten out in terms of the couple with the greatest height difference record.
Oh, I didn't realise that. Oh, so it's quite a sad story from our point of view. Oh, there they are, look. Oh, that's adorable.
And so,
wow, there really is a height difference.
Yeah, so and that is the story. I mean, they hold the highest record.
He looks like he might have his knees tucked up against his chest under that
Benny
jumper, just like pretending.
Well, they've definitely verified all of this. Nobody's cheating.
Well, there it is. Sadly, our show is over. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. Daily Mail, at last, a voice of sanity on children and trans dogma. The Guardian, thousands of children unsure of gender identity were let down by the NHS. And there is Professor Higgs of Boson fame, who we lost today at the age of 94, R.I.P. him. The Times NHS review rejects use of puberty blockers. The Mirror, Mr Bates versus the thugs in suits. iNews, public finance mess prevents spending spree after election, Labour warns. And finally, The Express, bonkers ruling proves why UK should quit Eurocorp. That's all we have time for. Thanks to my guests Leo Kirsten, Daniel Barker. Andrew Doyle will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. Meanwhile, I've been Simon Evans. Thank you and good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, it's going to be a dry and clear night for most of us across the UK.
There's a chance of frost tomorrow, but it will also be a fairly bright start. That's as this ridge of high pressure is moving in for this evening. It's a brief settled interlude between weather systems, so there will be more rain to come on Wednesday. But for the time being, it's going to be a dry night and a clear night. So plenty of starry skies, and that's going to allow temperatures to fall away much more quickly than they have done of late. So it's going to be a colder start tomorrow with a risk of frost across eastern areas of Scotland, northeast England as well. But everywhere is going to be on the chillier side to start the day, away from the far west, where we'll see the rain move in quite quickly tomorrow morning. So Northern Ireland seeing the heaviest rain first thing, but also cloudy skies and some fairly persistent rain across parts of Wales, the southwest. But it's into Scotland, western Scotland in particular, where the rain will turn quite persistent through the day, as well as parts of the Lake District. We could see 60 millimetres of rain falling through the day. But it is going to be a warmer day, so that cloud and rain is bringing with it milder air that stays with us for Thursday as well. And on Thursdays, there is a chance of seeing some brighter spells, particularly across northern and eastern areas of the country. Across the south, we're more likely to see some drizzly rain come and go through the day. Friday, once again, looks like it should stay dry across southern areas, with more rain moving into the north and temperatures rising to the high teens.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good evening. In 1 hour's time at the Emirates Stadium, Arsenal will play Bayern Munich. There is an ISIS terrorist threat over the game. We'll go live to the stadium to see what is going on. Rachel Reeves sits down with GB News' Chris Hope and talks about her tax plans. Let's look at the numbers. Do they actually add up? And David Cameron goes to Mar-a-Lago to pay homage to President Trump. Talk about eat humble pie. We'll discuss that at some length too. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the breaking news this hour, in fact, within the last 20 minutes, we've heard the MP, William Wragg, has voluntarily, we understand, given up the Conservative whip after he admitted giving his colleagues phone numbers to a suspected scammer, and that is coming from a spokesperson at the Tory whip's office here in central London. Well, last night, we know he resigned from his position on 2 other parliamentary committee positions. Mr Wragg has claimed he was manipulated into sharing other politicians' personal numbers and details as part of a Westminster sexting scam. He has since apologised. He said he was mortified for his mistake, and that prompted the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, to call him courageous for coming forward. He has now resigned as an MP. Well, the other major news this evening, as you've been hearing, European football's governing body has insisted that all of this week's Champions League quarter-finals will go ahead as planned tonight, despite an Islamic State terror threat. Arsenal will be hosting Bayern Munich tonight at the Emirates Stadium. That's in an hour's time. Man City are in action. They're playing away to Real Madrid. Here, the Metropolitan Police says it does have a robust policing plan in place for the game this evening. Islamic State, of course, the ones who claimed responsibility for that attack last month on a Moscow concert hall, resulting in the deaths of more than 140 people. 6 migrants have been injured in the latest wave of violence in northern France as people smugglers clashed with asylum seekers trying to force their way onto small boats without paying. The latest violence erupted on a beach near Dunkirk and resulted in at least 2 of the migrants being stabbed multiple times. The incident was followed by more violence in the same area just a short while later. Police came under attack from a large group of migrants who then threw stones, bottles and other missiles at officers who were trying to sort out the affray. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak met with the President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, at Downing Street earlier on today. That visit coming as it was revealed some of the housing built to accommodate migrants after they're deported has been sold on to locals. And lastly, His Majesty the King has been presented today with the first banknotes featuring his image as he returned from a short Easter break to view the new currency at Buckingham Palace. King Charles smiled, we understand, as he inspected the new notes of each denomination. They'll enter circulation from June. He's only the 2nd British monarch to have his likeness printed on a banknote. Existing banknotes from the reign of Queen Elizabeth II will continue to be used alongside the new notes which go into circulation in June. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. In about an hour's time.